Deep in the desert, 50 kilometers from Cairo, something impossible is rising from the sand. An entire city, built from nothing, in less than 10 years. This isn't just construction. This is a $60 billion bet that will change the Middle East forever. But here's what they're not telling you. While the world watches gleaming towers rise in the desert, the real story is happening behind closed doors, in boardrooms where Gulf billionaires shake hands with Chinese developers, in luxury penthouses being sold to people you'll never see, in underground systems that stretch for miles beneath the sand. Egypt's new administrative capital isn't what you think it is. Today, I'm going to show you 3 things the government doesn't want exposed. First, who's really paying for this city and why they want it kept quiet. Second, the hidden purpose behind every building, every road, every square meter of this place. And third, why this city might be the most important construction project on Earth right now. Let me show you exactly how this happened, and why everything you know about Cairo is about to change forever. Cairo's drowning. 22 million people crammed into a city built for 4 million. Traffic that doesn't move. Air you can taste. Buildings stacked so tight that sunlight barely reaches the streets. For decades, Egypt's government tried everything. New roads, metro lines, housing projects, nothing worked. Then, in 2015, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi made an announcement that shocked the world. Egypt would build a new capital, from scratch, in 7 years. The media laughed. Economists called it impossible. Financial analysts said Egypt couldn't afford it. They were all wrong. Today, the new administrative capital spans 700 square kilometers. That's bigger than Singapore, larger than Bahrain, almost the size of New York City. But size isn't what makes this project remarkable. What makes it remarkable is this. Nobody knows exactly who's building it, or who's paying for it, or who will actually live there. Official documents say the Egyptian government is in charge, but dig deeper and you find Chinese construction firms, Abu Dhabi investment funds, Saudi developers, anonymous shell companies registered in places you've never heard of. The project is being built by a company called the Administrative Capital for Urban Development. Sounds official, right? Here's the twist. That company is owned by the Egyptian military, not the government. The military. And the military in Egypt controls roughly 40% of the entire economy. They own factories, hotels, gas stations, construction companies, even olive oil brands. So when they announced they were building a new capital, they weren't asking for permission. They were declaring a new reality. Now here's where things get really interesting, because this city isn't being built for ordinary Egyptians. Let me tell you about the apartments. The cheapest unit in the new administrative capital costs about $100,000. That's roughly 3 million Egyptian pounds. In a country where the average annual income is around $3,500. Do the math. An average Egyptian would need to save every single penny they earn for 28 years to afford the cheapest apartment in their new capital. And that's just the entry point. Luxury penthouses in the towers? $5 million. $10 million. Some reportedly sold for $20 million or more, to people whose names never appear in public records. Sources suggest that many of these properties were purchased by Gulf investors, Saudi princes, Emirati businessmen, Kuwaiti families looking for a safe place to park their wealth. But here's what makes this truly extraordinary. According to reports, roughly 30% of the residential units sold in the first phase were bought by foreign nationals, not Egyptians, foreigners. The Egyptian government is building a new capital for Egypt and selling it to people who don't live in Egypt. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's just how luxury real estate works. Rich people buy property everywhere. But this isn't London or Dubai or New York. This is the seat of government, the place where laws are made, where the president will live, where every government ministry will operate. And it's being turned into a gated community for the ultra-wealthy. The city features something called the iconic tower. At 385 meters, it will be the tallest building in Africa. The design, sleek glass, modern architecture, looks like it belongs in Singapore or Shanghai. There's also something called the Green River, an artificial park that runs through the city for 35 kilometers, wider than Central Park, filled with trees shipped in from around the world in a desert. Analysts suggest this park alone costs millions of dollars per year just to maintain. The water, the irrigation, the staff. All this in a country where millions of people still don't have reliable access to clean water. But the most telling detail? The roads. The new administrative capital has some of the widest roads in the world. 8 lanes, 10 lanes, 12 lanes in some places. Roads so wide you could land a plane on them. Why? Because the city was designed for cars, luxury cars, not public transportation, not walkability, not bicycles. This is a city built for people who own Range Rovers and Bentleys, not for people who take the bus. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this, because the real estate is just the surface. The money behind this project tells a much darker story. Let's talk about the $60 billion question. Where did the money come from? Official statements say the project is self-funded through land sales and private investment. The Egyptian government insists taxpayer money isn't being used. That's technically true. But technically true and actually true are two very different things. Here's how it really works. The Egyptian military owns massive amounts of land, desert land that officially belongs to the state. But the military controls it. When they announced the new administrative capital, they took 700 square kilometers of this land and gave it to their development company for free. Then they started selling plots to developers, Chinese companies, Gulf investors, Egyptian businessmen with the right connections. According to reports, some land parcels sold for 10 times their estimated value. Others went to companies owned by people close to the government. The money from these sales went directly to the administrative capital for urban development. Not to the treasury, not to the government, to the company controlled by the military. But land sales alone couldn't fund a $60 billion project. So they brought in the Chinese. China State Construction Engineering Corporation became the lead contractor for the Central Business District. 20 skyscrapers, including the iconic tower. The cost? $3 billion. Sources indicate that China provided a significant portion of this funding through development loans, not grants. Loans that Egypt will have to repay with interest. This is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, a global strategy where China lends money to developing countries for infrastructure projects. Then Chinese companies build those projects, using Chinese materials, employing Chinese workers. If the country can't repay the loans, China takes control of the infrastructure. It happened in Sri Lanka with the Hambantota port, in Pakistan with the Gwadar port, in several African countries with roads and railways, and now it's happening in Egypt. But China isn't the only player. The United Arab Emirates has invested billions in Egyptian real estate over the past decade. Analysts suggest a significant portion of that money went into the new administrative capital. Saudi Arabia announced a $10 billion investment package with Egypt in 2022. While official statements say the money was for various projects, sources indicate much of it was directed toward the new capital. Why would Gulf countries invest so heavily in Egypt's new capital? Control. Egypt is the most populous country in the Arab world. It sits at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe. It controls the Suez Canal, through which 12% of global trade passes. Whoever has influence over Egypt has influence over the entire region. And the new administrative capital is the key to that influence. By owning property in the city, by funding its construction, by having their companies build its infrastructure, These foreign powers are literally buying a seat at Egypt's table. But here's the part nobody talks about. While billions flow into luxury towers and artificial parks, Egypt's debt keeps growing. The country reportedly owes over $150 billion to foreign creditors. The Egyptian pound has lost half its value in the past few years. Inflation is crushing the middle class. Basic food items cost twice what they did 3 years ago. And yet, the construction continues. This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. Because this isn't really about building a city. It's about building something else entirely. The new administrative capital isn't a city. It's a fortress. Look at the layout. Really look at it. The government district sits in the center, surrounded by buffer zones, wide empty spaces between the administrative buildings and residential areas. The roads, those impossibly wide roads, they're not for traffic. They're for military vehicles. Sources familiar with the project suggest that the new administrative capital was designed with security as the primary concern. Not efficiency, not sustainability, not community. Security. Here's what most people don't know. In 2011, massive protests erupted in Tahrir Square in downtown Cairo. Millions of Egyptians demanded change. The government fell. In 2013, more protests, more chaos. The military took control. The problem? The government was too accessible, too close to the people. Presidential palaces sat in the middle of crowded neighborhoods. Government buildings lined streets where ordinary Egyptians walked every day. When people got angry, they could reach the symbols of power. They could surround the palace, block the roads, shut down the government. The new administrative capital solves that problem. It sits 50 kilometers from Cairo, in the middle of the desert, surrounded by empty land. You can't march 50 kilometers through the desert. You can't organize millions of people to protest in a place most Egyptians can't afford to reach. The city has controlled access points, security checkpoints, surveillance systems everywhere. According to reports, the new capital features one of the most sophisticated security infrastructures in the Middle East. Facial recognition cameras, license plate readers, biometric access controls. The government can monitor everyone who enters, track their movements, know exactly where they go. But it gets deeper. Analysts point out that the city's design mirrors other autocratic capitals. Naypyidaw in Myanmar, Astana in Kazakhstan, Brasilia in Brazil during its military dictatorship. All of these cities share certain features: geographic isolation, wide boulevards that prevent crowds from forming, government districts separated from residential areas, limited public spaces where people can gather. They're designed to prevent protest, to make revolution impossible. And that's exactly what Egypt's new administrative capital does. But here's the truly brilliant part. By making the city exclusive and expensive, by marketing it as a luxury destination, by attracting wealthy foreign buyers, the government created a narrative. This isn't an isolated fortress. It's a world-class city, a symbol of progress, a beacon of modernization. People don't question why the government needs to be 50 kilometers from the population. They see the shiny towers and think, wow, Egypt is developing. The isolation isn't a bug, it's the entire feature. Now let me tell you about the underground systems. Sources suggest the new capital includes extensive underground infrastructure, not just utilities, tunnels, bunkers, emergency evacuation routes. The official explanation? Modern city planning, protection against flooding, space for utilities. But analysts note, the scale goes far beyond what's needed for utilities. Some tunnels reportedly stretch for kilometers, connect government buildings to military installations. The leadership can move through the city without ever appearing above ground. They can escape if needed, disappear, reappear somewhere else entirely. This level of security infrastructure tells you everything you need to know about why this city exists. It's not about serving the Egyptian people. It's about protecting power from the Egyptian people. So what does all this mean for us today? Why should you care about a city being built in the Egyptian desert? Egypt's new administrative capital is a blueprint, not just for Egypt, for every country where governments feel threatened by their own people. Think about it. In the past, if you wanted to control a population, you needed soldiers in the streets, checkpoints on every corner, visible oppression. But visible oppression creates resistance. It makes people angry. It unites them against you. The new administrative capital shows a different way. You don't need soldiers everywhere. You just need distance, architecture, design. You build your government so far from the people that they can't reach you. You make access so expensive that ordinary citizens can't afford to be there. You create a physical barrier that feels natural, inevitable. Other countries are watching. Indonesia announced plans to move its capital from Jakarta to a new city in Borneo. The cost? $33 billion. The official reason? Jakarta is sinking, overcrowded, polluted. But look at the design. The new Indonesian capital follows the same pattern. Government district isolated from residential areas. Wide security zones, controlled access. Myanmar's Naypyidaw was built in 2005. Same concept. Government buildings in the middle of nowhere. 20-lane highways with no traffic. A capital city with almost no people. Kazakhstan moved its capital to Astana in 1997, built in the northern steppes, far from the population centers in the south. Same security-first architecture. These aren't coincidences. They're a trend. Governments around the world are learning. If you want to stay in power, you need to be unreachable. But there's another layer to this. The new administrative capital represents a new kind of colonialism. In the old days, colonial powers sent armies, raised flags, ruled directly. Now, they lend money, build infrastructure, own property. China doesn't need to invade Egypt. They just need to own the buildings where Egyptian laws are made. Gulf states don't need to annex territory. They just need to control where the elite live and work. And when Egypt can't repay those loans, when the debt becomes unsustainable, those foreign powers will have leverage. They'll be able to demand policy changes, trade agreements, military access, political support, all without firing a single shot. For ordinary Egyptians, this has immediate consequences. The best government jobs will be in the new capital, but most Egyptians won't be able to afford to live there. So they'll commute, 2 hours each way, 4 hours a day, just to work for their own government. The wealthy will live in comfort, gated communities, perfect weather control, manicured parks. Everyone else will stay in Cairo, the crowded, polluted, crumbling city. The gap between rich and poor, already massive, will become unbridgeable. And here's the terrifying part. This might work. Autocratic governments struggle with succession. Leaders get old. Coups happen. Popular movements overthrow them. But if you can physically separate power from the people, if you can make government infrastructure immune to popular pressure, you solve that problem. The regime becomes permanent. Not because people love it, because they can't reach it. So what's the lesson here? Architecture is politics. Urban planning is power. Where buildings sit and who can access them determines who controls a country. When governments start building new capitals far from their populations, they're not solving traffic problems. They're solving control problems. And once that infrastructure exists, once power is relocated, it's almost impossible to reverse. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. Something that changes the entire story. The new administrative capital might never actually function as a capital. Let me explain what I mean. Right now, in early 2026, the city is mostly empty. According to reports, fewer than 100,000 people actually live there full-time. The government keeps announcing that ministries will relocate, that operations will move, that the transition is happening. But most government employees still work in Cairo. The real decisions still happen in the old capital. The international embassies haven't moved. The business community hasn't relocated. Sources familiar with the project suggest many government workers are resisting the move. They don't want to commute 4 hours a day. They can't afford housing in the new city. They don't want to leave their communities. So the new administrative capital sits there, gleaming and empty, a $60 billion ghost town. But here's what makes this fascinating. It might not matter if people live there. The real purpose of the project might not be to create a functioning city. It might be to create the appearance of progress, to show the world that Egypt is modern, developing, investment-worthy. Every time a foreign leader visits, they're taken to the new capital, shown the towers, the parks, the monuments. The message? Egypt is stable. Egypt is growing. Egypt is a good bet. Meanwhile, the actual population struggles with inflation, poverty, unemployment, but those problems aren't visible from the new capital. The new capital is perfect, clean, controlled. It's a facade, a $60 billion facade, and it's working. Analysts point out that despite Egypt's economic struggles, foreign investment keeps flowing, partly because of the new capital, partly because investors see the government's ambition and commitment. If you're willing to build an entire city from nothing, you must be serious. You must have resources. You must be worth betting on. So in a weird way, the new administrative capital is both a massive success and a complete failure. It fails as a city, but succeeds as a symbol. It fails to house Egyptians, but succeeds at attracting foreign money. It fails to solve Cairo's problems, but succeeds at isolating the government from accountability. And maybe that was always the plan. Maybe the point wasn't to create a functional city. Maybe the point was to create distance, to establish control, to lock in power for generations. If that's true, then the new administrative capital is the most successful government project in modern Egyptian history, because it does exactly what it was designed to do. It separates power from the people, forever. If this opened your eyes to how modern power really works, you need to understand what happens next. So let's recap what we've uncovered. Egypt's new administrative capital is a $60 billion project that ordinary Egyptians can't afford to access. It's funded by foreign powers who want influence over Egypt's future. It's designed not as a city, but as a fortress that keeps government isolated from the people. And it's working. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't just about Egypt. This is a preview of the future. Around the world, governments are learning that the best way to stay in power isn't to win hearts and minds. It's to become unreachable. Build far from your population. Make access expensive. Design everything around control. This is what elite power looks like in the 21st century. Not armies in the streets, not visible oppression. Just distance, architecture, economic barriers, and once these systems are built, they're almost impossible to dismantle. So what can you do? First, understand the pattern. When you see countries building new capitals far from population centers, ask why. When you see massive infrastructure projects funded by foreign powers, ask who benefits. Second, follow the money. These projects always involve complex financial arrangements, shell companies, offshore accounts, loans with hidden conditions. The money trail tells you who's really in charge. Third, pay attention to who gets excluded. If ordinary citizens can't afford to live in their own capital, that's not an accident. It's a choice. And fourth, remember this. Power always tries to protect itself. Always tries to become permanent. Always tries to put distance between itself and accountability. The new administrative capital is just one example, but it's a perfect example. It shows us how elites operate in the modern world. how they use development and progress as cover for control. Now, if this video opened your eyes to how these systems really work, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button, because we're building something different here at The Rich Code. We don't just tell you about luxury lifestyles. We show you how power actually works, how wealth really flows, how the elite maintain control. Most channels show you the surface, the yachts, the mansions, the private jets. We show you what's underneath, the structures, the systems, the strategies. Because understanding how the game is played is the first step to playing it yourself. Next, smash that like button. It tells YouTube to share this with more people. And this is exactly the kind of information that needs to spread. The mainstream media won't tell you these stories. They're too busy covering whatever scandal is trending. They don't have time to dig into $60 billion projects that reshape how power works. But we do, and we will keep doing it if you support us. Now, I want to ask you something specific. What other mega projects should we investigate? Saudi Arabia's Neom? The Line City in the desert? China's Belt and Road Initiative? The infrastructure projects spanning 3 continents? Dubai's expansion projects? The artificial islands and underwater hotels? Drop a comment and let me know. Tell me which billionaire project you want exposed next. Because here's what we're really doing here. We're not just making videos about rich people, we're decoding the system. We're revealing how modern power structures actually operate. And the more you understand these systems, the better equipped you are to navigate them. Whether you're an entrepreneur trying to understand how deals really get done, an investor trying to spot opportunities before they're obvious, or just someone curious about how the world actually works, this is your education. And speaking of education, if you want to go deeper, I've created something special. A free newsletter where I break down one elite strategy every week. The tactics billionaires use that nobody talks about. The financial structures behind mega projects. The geopolitical moves that shape markets. It's completely free. No sales pitches, just pure insight delivered to your inbox. The link is in the description. Join thousands of other people who are learning how power really works. Before you go, one more thing. If you found this video valuable, share it. Send it to someone who needs to see it. Post it on your social media. Start conversations about these topics. Because the only way we break through the noise is if you help us spread the message. The elite want these systems to stay hidden. They want their projects to go unnoticed. They want people to see the shiny surface and never question what's underneath. But we're changing that. One video at a time, one insight at a time, one person at a time. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for being part of this community